Well, it's the morning after the night before for Chelsea, and a lot of soul searching, really, particularly among the fans, as to how and why they didn't beat Arsenal. Now, of course, look, going to Arsenal, needing to win is a big task. They're the best team in England at the moment, arguably the best team in Europe, so it's never going to be easy. But I think a lot of the Chelsea fans are wondering whether they could and should have given it more of a go. I mean, I quite liked what Rosenior did in the first half. I mean, it was impressive the way that he was able to negate Arsenal and stop them from really threatening, barring one or two little openings. But ultimately, it didn't work. If the plan was stay in the game till half time, then really push for it second half, it didn't work. Now, I wonder whether that's partly because, especially people like João Pedro, who had an excellent first half, just holding up the ball and dropping deep in his own half and retaining the ball, so that Arsenal's had no openings. You wonder whether he, in particular, as the focal point for the entire game, whether he just run out of a bit of gas in the second half. So when the onus was on Chelsea to take the game to Arsenal, he just didn't have the puff to do it. But yeah, listen, if from one of those late sort of half chances or late free kicks or whatever, they'd grabbed a goal and forced it into extra time, you'd have said, well, fair play, Liam Rosenior, you have taken on this Arsenal team and you've at least forced it to extra time and given your team a fighting chance of getting into the final. But really, although there was more attacking intent from Chelsea in the second half, there really wasn't a lot of penetration. That really has been a theme of this season for Chelsea, not just against teams like Arsenal, but against lower ranking teams as well. They found it hard to break teams down, even with, as they had on the pitch just from before the hour, Esteval and Palmer, they found it hard to find a way through the Arsenal defence. And as I said, there's no shame in that. Lots of people find it very hard to get through the Arsenal defence. It's by far the best in the Premier League. But you wonder, looking at the approach, the sort of the game of two halves approach, whether Rosenior might have been better looking at the Man United blueprint. Man United being the only team who've beaten Arsenal at the Emirates and under Michael Carrick, who, yeah, let's be fair, as an interim manager, has a sort of free hit. He played a lot more front foot against Arsenal, and again, it could have gone either way that game, especially when Arsenal put it back to 2-2, and in the end, Carrick gets the late goal through Cunha to win the game. But you wonder whether had Chelsea had the difference between the two halves not been so extreme, if they had a little bit more of a go in the first half, might they have been able to have a bit more of a go in the second as well, not run out of juice and run out of ideas. So I think that's an issue Rosenior's going to have to own. As you say, it looks, these sort of things, when you look at the team and you see the setup, these things are great when they come off, and you're a hero, and when they don't, you're a zero, and that's just the way of the world. But I kind of liked what he was doing in the first half. That worked, but the second half didn't, and that's why Chelsea are not in there. One thing which I think other people will learn from Rosenior, and Rosenior himself, I'm sure, had thought about it before Shea Given said it on Match of the Day at the weekend. Why sit back and let Arsenal have a barrage of corners and let them win so many corners, have the same routine, or be able to mix up the routines? If you have 5, 6, 7 corners in a game against Arsenal, then you can be pretty sure they're going to get at least a shot or a header on target out of those. So why let them do it? Why subject yourself to that pressure? Why not do something different? And throwing 3 men forward, just as Arsenal are about to take a free kick, that's great. I think that's really, really good to see someone who's at least trying to disrupt what Arsenal are trying to do, because no one else has really tried that. That's this season. That's something which I think other managers will pick up on. Maybe not in the same way, but just thinking of a way to disrupt Arsenal's set piece prowess. It was written in the stars. We were myself and my colleagues Lloyd and Jack were talking about it. It was written in the stars that someone with their Chelsea connections was going to score the goal. It ended up being Kai Havertz, and you can't blame Chelsea particularly that they're trying to win the game, albeit not putting any crosses in, which was a bit weird. But then they've thrown all those men forward, and on the break, and Havertz seals the game in the last minute stoppage time. But I think the symbolic element of Havertz scoring will not be lost at all on Chelsea fans. Obviously, he's the man who scored the winning goal in the Champions League final not so long ago, and they'll be reflecting on, well, where have this team gone in that period, and how have they changed? And you think, if you see, Havertz, Madueke, Kepa as a reserve goalkeeper, and even Declan Rice, former Chelsea academy player, they're all pretty much on target to win a Premier League title. And Chelsea fans are entitled to ask, how far off are we? And indeed, what is the goal of this ownership? Is it to push and try and win these big titles and generate all the money and glitz that come with that, or is getting in the Champions League enough and being there or thereabouts, but they're not willing to put in the money or buy the type of player they arguably need in order to challenge for these big trophies? And I still think that's something which the Chelsea ownership, be it the ownership or the sporting directors, need to come out and have an honest kind of conversation or address to the Chelsea support, because as I say, it wasn't so long ago they were winning Champions Leagues, and now they seem to be quite a way off that. Right, that's done now. Whatever you think of Rosenior's tactics against Arsenal, they didn't work. The chance of getting the final is gone, and now we're back to the nitty gritty. He's shown, they've come up short against, as I said, the best team in England, the best team in the land. Now they've got to show against, statistically the worst team in the Premier League, Wolves, on Saturday, and then the following Tuesday, Leeds, a team who beat them in the dying days of Maresca's reign. He's got to show that he can at least unpick those defences. And I think Rosenior's got to be careful he doesn't fall into the same kind of narrative that was around Maresca. Under Maresca this season in particular, Chelsea found it very hard to break down teams that were going to sit back and defend deep, and there hasn't been the creativity. Now, part of that has been because they have not had a fit and firing Cole Palmer to unlock those defences. But while he's still struggling for top form and the fitness to be able to play all those games, Rosenior's got to find a solution. Now, the way things worked out, I'd be amazed if he still starts. João Pedro has run himself into the ground. I mean, Enzo Fernandez has been playing a lot of football, so he's going to have to make some changes for the Wolves game. But at the same time, he needs to avoid falling into the trap of making so many changes that, much like against West Ham, he has to throw on loads of players at half-time to try and save the game. You can't rely on that happening all the time. It will work for you a few times, but not every time. And these next two games are important, I think, for Rosenior to regain some of the momentum he had built up by winning 6 of his first 7 games. As I say, there's no shame in not seeing off Arsenal over a 2-legged Carabao Cup semi-final, but there will be shame if they don't beat Wolves and they don't beat Leeds and risk falling off the pace in the race for Champions League places next season.